Hello and welcome to this updated and hopefully slower version of Fluid tutorial number 1. I have prepared a simulation. Let's look at that. This is what we will create. Let's play this. So this is the end result of this tutorial. And you can see that the fluid starts as a sphere, which is a little bit flattened at the top because it's almost at the edge of what is the fluid domain. And you can see that the fluid moves within a cube, and that's because the fluid domain is cubical. So if this is something that you feel you're interested in pursuing, then let's look at this. So I opened up a Blender file here. This is a new Blender file, and there are two things that you absolutely have to have for a fluid simulation to happen, and that is that you have to have a domain, which will be a mesh object, and you must have either a fluid object or an inlet object. Both are mesh objects, and that's how the volume of the fluid is determined. First, I'll use this cube as my domain, and I'll scale it up. And I go over to wireframe mode, so I'll press Z for that, so we can see what's going on. So this is my fluid domain object, and I'll press 5 and 1 on the num keypad. So now I'm viewing this from the front in orthogonal view, and I haven't assigned this any physics properties yet, because first I will add, through pressing Shift and A on my keyboard, and add a UV sphere. This will probably be a little bit smaller than the one that I used in the other one that I already prepared, but it doesn't really matter. So now this is the one that I would like to use as my fluid object, and this is my fluid domain. And I'll also add Shift A, another lamp, because that's really helpful to be able to see what's going on. And I'll change the intensity of that lamp to 0.3. And I would like to also move the camera a little bit. Look at this from the top, and then I'll press 0 to look through the camera, and I can turn it, like I press R and then X, like that, and then I can press G and then move the mouse down and press G and Z, so I'm pulling it out, so that way I have a different view of this than I had previously. Okay, so let's do the physics thing. We'll select this object and press the physics tab here and the fluid button, and then select that as a domain. And I'll just leave all the settings just the way they are for now, because the next thing I will click that thing, and it really doesn't matter in what order you do these things. Fluid and fluid, and that's all I really need to do to this. That object that's all I need to do. I would like to change this. This is the directory where the cache ends up. There are the files to describe what happens when the simulation runs. And I press 2 forward slashes, and I press cache tutorial. Okay, so now it's supposed to end up relative to this file with this subdirectory. But for that to happen, I have to save this file. So I press F2, and I have the other ones here, so just to save some time, I'll tutorial demonstrator like that, and save as a Blender file. So now I have the bare minimum of what I need to be able to bake this simulation. And let's look at the fluid world, and what we have here is we have the fluid presets, and I think that this here, 1 as a base and 6 as an exponent, is the same thing as water. Yes, it is. So I'll keep it as water, and that's all I do. This is the size of the world, and I keep it right like that. And I keep this, I'll put this to free slip. That means it will slosh around a little bit more. And that's it for now, because what we'll do now is just bake this simulation. So I'll press the bake button, and you can see instantly this is starting to simulate, starting to simulate what would happen if a spherical fluid would be released into this, normal gravity field. And we can actually step, if we want to, we can just step forward into the simulation here until, we can keep stepping, and that's what it looks like. And it could easily look different from time to time. This might not look the same as the one that I did before, because there are tiny little variations on the input, and you can actually even play it, and there, like the bake hasn't gone to that point yet, so then you'll see what the domain looks like in its own by itself. And we can play backwards. And the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to start a render while you're baking. That really messes things up, in the sense that you're overwhelming your system. So I won't even bother to pause this, because it's so little left. I'm just going to play it backwards, and you can see how everything just kind of comes back. So there you go. Okay, the bake is done. Okay, and let's then give this, this fluid has to have a material, right? We can do this and look at this, and then we can press F12 to render it, and then you just get this, this gray material. And the one thing that you can see here is that it's blocky. It's not shaded smooth. It's shaded flat, as it's called. So we'll do that first. We'll press W. No, we will select the domain. Press now. What is it that we have? Oh yeah, we'll do this. We have to press tab to go into edit mode, and then we press W. Of course, sorry. Shade smooth. So now it's shaded smooth, and if I press F12, let's change the render parameters to get 100% there. Press F12 again. So then you can see that the thing is actually rendered smooth. So it looks a little bit more fluidy, but we are going to give it a material. So let's do that, and I'll just remove that material slot and give that new material a name. I call it fluid, And in keeping with the tradition of this tutorial, I'll make it green. And I will make it transparent, ray trace transparent. I'm clicking transparency and then ray trace, and then bring down the alpha and the specular alpha. And we can do this like that, and we can have the refractive index up a little bit and filter like that, and then we render it again. Yep, that looks more or less like the previous one. And another thing you can do is you can select this fluid object and simply just move it to another layer that is not visible. And of course, if you look at this in solid, then this is what it will look like, and you can choose rendered. Takes a while then, but you can actually, you know, just kind of, there you go. And so it doesn't play with when you have rendered, but in rendered you can move around in it like that. So those are the elements that you actually have to make this happen. I'll go over to the file that I used to create the video that we looked at from the beginning, and that's this one here. And here, what I did when I animated this, I used a directory, still render, and this is where all the stills were rendered. So I'll just show you how that is done if you're not familiar with that. So we can just do this again, just not the whole thing. Call it still render TWO, and then change this to JPEG here. And we can just render 10 images. That's fine, because I don't want really to render all of this. So now I set this up to be, the still images would end up here, and I should really actually have a name for them to display like that. And I press animation, and then there will be 10 images rendered. Still render 2 here. So this is where that's the directory where these images will end up. And go back to here and bring up this again. So, okay, it's all rendered. And then we'll go to video editing. And let's make sure that, yeah, we're in start frame 1. And then I do add image. And I don't want to use those again. I want to use the ones that we just rendered, still rendered 2. And I can just press the left mouse button and go like that. Add image strip. So now I have added this little image strip here, only 10 frames. I'll go back to default. And yeah, we're going to only render from frame 1 to 10. And I'm choosing Xvid. And I could actually, yeah, I would like to use video render here, another directory, video test 01, like that. So now we press animation, and then it will take those images, those still images, and render that video. So if we look at that video render, here's this test that goes from 1 to 10 frames, and we can just play that, and that's all we get. So that is the entire process of simulating a fluid in the simplest of fashion in Blender. I hope this was slower and more understandable than the previous one. And if not, you can just leave a comment and we can see what we can do. I don't have a whole lot of time, so remember that. Thank you.